So lots of heat and entertainment in the House today, lots of rhetoric, as you also heard, but did this actually achieve anything? Let's put that to a political analyst, Ebrahim Fakir, who joins us on Newsnight. Ebrahim, welcome. Thanks very much for joining us. Heated debate in Parliament. We've had the release of the report Sunday. Has this done enough to appease, enough to lower public anger?
No, I'm afraid, Jeremy, it hasn't. But firstly, thanks for speaking to me. I hope this gives me license to drop your name now everywhere I go. No, it hasn't appeased the public and certainly hasn't appeased the opposition parties. And I'm not convinced that today's parliamentary debate was constructive in any sense. And there was very meaningful debate to be had on the basis of the report. Now, I think the report was also not released on Sunday just as a corrective. I mean, we only received this today. Now, if you look at the terms of reference, there's enough to debate in the House on the actual terms of reference for the report. Were they wide enough? Were they interpreted correctly? Were the Directors General, in fact, faithful to their terms of reference? On the surface of it, it looks as if their findings are appropriate and consistent with the terms of reference. But there are two questions, Jeremy. The one is, are the terms of reference enough? And secondly, is any investigation going to actually lead to a public discussion about the culture within which this dropping of names, abuse and manipulation of processes, and flights of fancy, excuse the pun, don't gather traction of their own? And I'm not sure, and I'm not convinced that that's the case, and that's not the debate we're having, which is the ethical debate.
All right, let's talk about terms of reference in just a moment, or rather the manipulation of process in just a moment. But the terms of reference, as far as the initial report is concerned, how should those have changed? How should they have been widened?
Well, I'm not sure that they could have been changed or widened, and I'm not sure that the terms of reference can in fact cover all the ethical, cultural issues. But there is a matter of concern here about the way in which the terms of references have been interpreted. Now, one of the key things is to determine the sequence of events prior, during the landing and after the landing, speak to the relevant people, and then find establish whether the established legislative, regulatory and other protocols were observed. And there's one key thing when you read the report which doesn't in fact come out. So they've asked Bruce Kolwane a whole series of questions, but no one's asked him, Bruce, what has actually precipitated the fact that you'd put your job on the line and you'd allow this thing to happen, that you'd manipulate processes, you would drop names if indeed that is what he did. And you'd put your job on the line knowing that you're an astute and seasoned public servant, you were even an ambassador, you're a chief of state protocol for that matter, and you don't know what the legislation says.
So what climate exists that would have allowed him then to manipulate that process?
Well, this is the point I'm trying to make. I think what would have happened is that he assumed that A, he could have got away with it, and he could only assume that he would have got away with it if something of this nature had happened before, firstly. Secondly, given the relationship that is publicly known between the President and the Guptas, he may have assumed, rightly or wrongly, but this is an assumption that he does make, so it seems, that it would have been appropriate and it would have been okay. The third option is that he may have got something from the Guptas to allow this thing to actually happen and the trespass to occur. Now, this is the point about the terms of reference. No one has asked him yet, what made you and what precipitated you from doing this? So there's a whole series of investigations they do list and police cases which have been opened, but there isn't any investigation into whether he received a bribe or received anything from the Guptas in order to do this.
The solution, according to the report, and I quote, is a public service awareness campaign to discourage the negative culture of name dropping in the form of improper use of names of members of the executive in the public sector. What does that mean and will it work? Is it enough?
I can't imagine why none of us or any of us in the society know that it's wrong to just drop your name. I mean, if I go somewhere, if I go somewhere and say, Jeremy Mag sent me, you should give me a meal for free at some restaurant, I'm not sure that they're automatically going to do that. But there's one very curious thing that we're not talking about, and this coming from someone who actually supports the policy and principle of cadre deployment. Is there not perhaps a question to be asked about whether the wrong cadre was deployed, and is there serious questions to be raised about the nature and processes through which cadre deployment is going on? Because evidently, by all the evidence, this cadre was incorrectly deployed.
Final question then. It's unfortunate that President Zuma wasn't in the House today. Is he running for the hills?
It's very unfortunate. I don't know whether his diary allowed it or not, but it's curious that he's going to address a House of Traditional Leaders gathering at Parliament tomorrow. And I suspect that what we should be asking is the leader of, and was the leader of government business in the House to take note of what the opposition was saying? I think this was in part a missed opportunity in the sense that he ought to have been present, but it was also a missed opportunity in the sense that we didn't really talk about the real issues at stake. What we got was a lot of vacuity and a lot of rhetoric.
That's where we'll leave it. Political analyst Ebrahim Fakir with us here on Newsnight. A little later in the
News that moves. eNCA.com.